Hello everyone and welcome back to Teachers Talk Radio at the Schools and Academy show. We are now into the afternoon and we have a Teachers Talk Radio mug delivered with water in it. I'm joined by Emma Knights OBE, and Emma, I'll let you sort of introduce yourself a little bit as well. Go ahead.
Thank you. I'm Chief Executive of the National Governance Association, so we are the school and trust governance experts. We don't try and do anything else. We very much there to support all schools to govern well.
Right. Let me ask you then, what was it? Well, first of all, what was your keynote talk about? What were your key sort of things? Anything new, anything interesting that people should know? I'm sure there was lots interesting. I love to start an interview with an insult. It always sets the tone for everything to come.
Well, what was very pleasing was it was right at the end of the day and there were still people there. So I'm taking that as a positive. But there were sort of three themes. One is, don't forget that your governing board is the accountable body for your school, whether that's a maintained school or a trust. So they will be the people who are deciding the next steps for your school. Are you going to join a MAT? And if so, which one? And I talked.
Do you think they should?
Now we wouldn't tell individual schools what they should do because that is the job of our governance. So what we do is provide them with lots of guidance about things like questions to ask, things to consider, how to do due diligence, so that sort of legal side of things. And they will know in their locality what other schools are doing, what's best for their pupils, what are the challenges there. But we can, and we're really, really happy to come and talk to schools about their individual circumstances. And in those cases, we'd be saying to them, look, that's really good. You're having a conversation about culture, but have you actually looked at this thing called a scheme of delegation? Because you need to do that. So yes, talking about maintained schools, but also let's not forget single academy trusts, because they're also being asked by the government to join the MAT. So their views are really important. And then we talked about the MAT boards themselves, the boards of trustees. Are they looking to grow? And if so, how are they going to achieve that? Most of them want other schools to join them, sort of one by one, in a calm, controlled growth.
Yeah.
But the other way to do it is by merging two trusts. So I talked a little bit about that and how you might go about considering that. And then the last section was, so what does good governance look like? So we started this morning, I'm like a bookend with the Baroness Barron, the Minister for the School System, because she talked about strong trusts and said that strategic governance was part of that.
Yeah.
So I was trying to unpack that a little bit and saying, actually, we know what strong strategic governance is. I will be very surprised if there is very much new or different. It's about doing those things well, making good decisions. But I was having a little celebrate that the white paper talks about the importance of community and the importance of locality. So whatever structure people govern in, whether they're in individual schools or in trusts, everybody talks about how important it is for schools to be embedded in their communities, to be listening to parents.
And what role do governors play in that? What should they be playing?
They should have a really important role in that, because if you think whether you're a single school, but let's just think it's more complicated in a trust, in a MAT, because you've got your board of trustees who are by definition going to be a little bit distant from the schools. They're not going to know each and every school like the local governors do. So the local governors are the eyes and ears of the trust board. So that was a little phrase we started using about a decade ago, and we still use it because it's part of the core function of those local governors, that they feed up to the trust board and say, hang on, in our community, what people are telling us is most important or won't work, or have you heard about this? So that's crucial. The other thing that is really crucial for local governors and MATs to do is to monitor educational standards. And that's why most people volunteer, because they care about the kids' education. So that's a really important part. And the other thing that governors very much get involved in is making sure that safeguarding is good and strong, but also increasingly making sure that SEND provision, special education needs provision, is good and strong. So there's so much for local governors to do within a MAT. We're arguing that the department has now said that it's part of the system, and we're saying that local governance is here to stay. We need to make sure it's meaningful.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the key word, isn't it? I mean, in terms of like, we're obviously Teachers Talk Radio, so people who listen to this are probably teachers. So like, for a teacher, sometimes, I think in my career, I don't think I've ever met a governor.
Oh, that's not good, is it?
Maybe no, that's a lie. Maybe once or twice, but we're talking over a period of sort of 14 years, 15 years or whatever. So,
can I say a bit about? I didn't talk about this in my speech, but can I say a little bit around? So, teaching staff and indeed other staff who aren't teaching, we say that governors should be engaging. I mentioned, parents because of the community aspect of it, but they should also be engaging with staff and pupils. So we ask questions of governing boards about this in our annual survey. It's really interesting. They think they engage best with their staff, but actually when you ask them what they've done as a result, they've done least as a result of staff voice. And I think that's because they sometimes know members of staff. They might have recruited them, or, for example, they'll work closely with the Senko. They'll work, for example, with the senior leadership team. So I think they believe that they've got more rapport, perhaps, with the staff groups than they actually have. So we're saying to them, okay, absolutely minimum you should be doing is a staff survey, but then you should look at that and go, so what are we doing as a result? We don't just survey, for the sake of it, do you? And that might mean you ought to have a conversation with a few members of staff. If you get something in that survey that you're not sure about, you need to improve. So one is engagement. Definitely, it's a bit sad if staff don't know who the governors are, if they don't see them in school.
I mean, maybe that's not common. I mean, that's only my sort of career experience, but I'm sure there's many others with wildly different experience.
Absolutely. But then the other thing, which I think is really important, is that if teachers themselves, of course, can govern. So they can either govern as a staff governor, which is a really good experience to understand how the school works. But the other thing we've been doing with lots of success, actually, is encouraging middle leaders and senior leaders to govern at a different school or trust, because that way they learn loads and also the other school benefits from their experience.
Can I ask you a question about, because one of the things that sort of I personally often talk about, but also on Teachers Talk Radio, is sort of toxic schools and sort of like schools where the staff turnover is really high, where staff are obviously unhappy and so on. Now, quite often in those schools, the staff can't go to a leader because it could be that the leadership itself is one of the causes of the issues. They can't go to colleagues because they feel like they can't trust other people with getting advice. Now, could a member of staff sort of what role could a governing body play in almost like whistleblowing? I mean, do governing bodies have a role there? Can teachers go to the governing body?
So governing bodies should have a whistleblowing policy. It's not used as much as perhaps it could be in the school sector. People are slightly worried about doing it, even though whistleblowers, will tend to be anonymous. The other thing, of course, you could do is use the, as it were, staff processes, but actually taking out a grievance is a big deal. We know that. And lots of people think, well, life is too short for that. I don't want to get embroiled in this process. But actually, sometimes it is really important in order to improve things. So the trouble is that governors can't really get involved in individual cases initially and formally, because they'll be involved if there's a formal grievance. But that sort of goes back to that point about why it's really important to engage with staff, because they should pick that they won't
Yeah.
pick everything up. But
Definitely.
you'll get an inkling of things through surveys, through conversations.
Yeah.
You mentioned turnover. That's
Yeah.
really, really important.
Yeah.
Boards should look at turnover.
Yeah.
They should also look at summaries of exit interviews, or sometimes carry out the exit interviews themselves.
I mean, most schools
That
don't. It doesn't happen.
It doesn't.
But can governors do that?
Yes. So one of the things we've been saying to governors for some years now is you need to make sure there's an exit interview policy. And you're right, we then ask people how often that happened, and the answer is not a lot. So we're really missing a trick in the school sector.
Yeah.
And there's now some good people around that are talking about people strategies, not just workload and well-being, which is important, but also just managing school employment issues well. So definitely, at the end of the day, if staff are not being treated well as an employee, it is the board's responsibility to employ people well.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow.
We covered quite a lot in a few minutes.
We really have. I mean, we're on how many minutes? Let me check. 11 minutes has gone already. Well, I think that's it, really. I mean, I don't feel I can keep you. I could talk to you all day. It's absolutely a pleasure. So maybe you come on Teachers Talk Radio again for a more thorough conversation.
Absolutely, and I can persuade more teachers to volunteer, because one of the we've had some stories written up by some teachers and assistant principals, and the thing that comes up time and time again is they say it's the best CPD I've ever had. So I'll leave you with that little plug.
Thank you, and cheers, and thanks very much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Not at all. That was, and that's so interesting because